I had the opportunity to discuss the uncertainties of this new normal that we have all heard and perhaps even spoken of. For human beings, the world is becoming increasingly complicated, and the COVID-19 pandemic has not made things any easier. The environment has become increasingly uncertain, yet there are so many choices to be made every minute of every day. Making all these choices while having numerous options and so little knowledge on them is not an easy task. Therefore, aiming to address this issue, Professor Richard Thaler, a Nobel Prize winner, and Professor Cass Sunstein published a book together called Nudge: Improving Decisions About Health, Wealth, and Happiness. Their book coined the rather famous nudge theory. For those of you who don't know, nudge theory aims to help people make better decisions without restricting their options. And it does this by attempting to improve the choice environment, or as the publishers call it themselves, the choice architecture. Although the purpose of nudges is to design interventions to increase the general well-being of individuals and societies, a question, and perhaps a worthy one, is to ask, would nudges be also utilized by businesses simply to maximize their profit by channeling consumer behavior, or in other words, manipulating it? The short answer is yes. And interestingly, such usage of nudges were defined as sludge, which basically means nudging for evil, as Richard Thaler puts it himself. As a student studying psychology of economic life at LSE, I was honored with the opportunity to have a brief interview with Professor Cass Sunstein from Harvard University to discuss how he perceives the uncertain post-pandemic new normal, especially in terms of consumer behavior, way of thinking, and decision-making. I concluded the interview by asking him about sludges and whether or not he thinks we would be seeing more tendency from businesses towards utilizing them, especially given how many of them have experienced some sort of a crisis due to the pandemic. Quite fascinatingly, he mentioned how naming and defining a phenomena would help people in detecting them better, therefore raising awareness. And this is precisely why we have a concept called sludge. So let's now watch the interview together.
Hello again. I would like to start by thanking you for your kind participation on behalf of Future Frontiers Conference, London School of Economics and Imperial College London, and LSE and Imperial's Entrepreneur Society. Now, it has become a common experience for us all to hear or to use the term new normal. However, what this new normal will look like still remains overshadowed by great uncertainty for scientists, policymakers, and entrepreneurs. For those willing to engage in entrepreneurial activities, it is crucial to have at least some sort of speculation regarding this mysterious figure, otherwise known as the future consumer. Therefore, I would like to ask you to kindly share with us your thoughts and insights on the future consumer's behavior, preferences, and choices as some degree of normality is gradually being reintroduced back into our lives. Thank you.
Well, I can tell you a little bit about interventions and their effects. So predicting the future is an extremely challenging thing to do, but we do know that small interventions often have large consequences. So take, for example, a GPS device. That is a nudge which helps people to get to a destination that they want to go to. There are nudges that are like GPS devices all over the place. They might consist of markers that tell you, for example, that you should socially distance, or there may be signs which say you can't go in this store unless you are wearing a mask. Or there may be something saying that it's very easy to get vaccinated. You just go here at a certain time. That's kind of optimistic. With respect to consumers, there are things like calorie labels, which are like a GPS device, which tell you if you want to consume less calories, here's how. Or there might be something that says, something about something morally that you care about. It might be dolphins. It might be about some nation that's being mistreated, and there may be some indicator that there's no mistreatment of that nation. So there are indicators that are like GPS devices everywhere, and what they are doing, and this is increasingly visible, is they are making something that might be hard easy. So what we are increasingly seeing when things are working well, either from governments or from markets, is increased simplification and ease so that whatever consumers care about, they can implement through their consumption choices simply by virtue of the fact that they've been given some kind of marker.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And would you have any advice for those who are currently students and are willing to become future entrepreneurs, but still the post-COVID world remains under great uncertainty?
Well, the best advice, I think, for any of us is to pick some line of endeavor that we will really enjoy. So the best hedge against mistake is to have fun. If you choose something that you're having fun, the likelihood is that you'll succeed at it. Fun is kind of a predictor of whether people will do well. And even if you don't succeed at it, at least you will have had fun. So if there's something that gives you a kind of smile of delight or a little tickle in your spine, that's a good signal that you ought to keep doing it.
Sounds great. Yes, absolutely. I do agree with you on that one. And regarding the consumer's decision-making mechanism, do you think that we still will rely on more or less the same decision-making? I mean, like the system 1 and system 2, our emotions and rationality. Do you think the same mechanism will still hold even the post-COVID? Or do you think we will be seeing new forms of thinking and emotions from the consumers, basically?
Okay, so let's think of our species, and we have in our mind a capacity to do some things really quickly. So if we see a lion roaring, we will run even before we start thinking. And if we're asked to multiply 72 times 56, at least for me, you have to get out a pen and pencil, or you'll go on your calculator on your computer, which is relevant to your question. But if you're not going to use your calculator, you'll have to use your system 2, the more deliberative functions of your mind. And that's our species. That's not going to change because of COVID or not. On the other hand, system 1 post-COVID is going to be in many ways a little more timid and a little more cherishing of certain things than system 1 was before COVID. So we might see more a sense of gratitude when there's a capacity, let's say, to have a party or to go to a movie theater with a lot of people in it. And we might see a little more fear of risks of multiple kinds, not just of COVID, because of the experience. The case of the calculator on the machine suggests something highly relevant to your question, which is there will be increasingly, and we're observing this in real time, a capacity to replace our very fallible emotional system, system 1, not with our better, but also fallible calculative capacity, our system 2, but to use something like a calculator or an algorithm to try to figure something out. And while that can be fraught with hazards, it may be that we won't be as excellent at doing some things as we would have been had we not had the crutch. And there's a risk that the algorithm will steer us in a direction that maybe is in the interest of the person who designed the algorithm and not in our own interest. Still, there's a tremendous ability in areas that range from health to finance to safety to equality to use machine learning and artificial intelligence to achieve social goals that have long proved elusive.
Absolutely. And my last question, given the current state of the businesses that they're kind of facing at least some sort of crisis, do you think we will be seeing a little bit more of sludges after COVID?
Well, think of sludge, if you would, as friction that prevents people from going where they want. So it might be that to get a permit to be running a business, you have to navigate sludge. It might be forms, it might be waiting time, it might be an interview, or it might be to get economic help to start a business, not a permit, not a license, just a little startup money. You have to go through so much that you give up or at least get really sad and nervous. Or it might be that to get from one country to another, you have to navigate a system that's really complicated and a bit overwhelming. That's all sludge. What we've seen that's a beautiful thing, really, one of the numerous beautiful things amidst something not beautiful, that is a pandemic, is that there's been a bit of a war on sludge, bottom-up war, where companies of all kinds have said to their customers, you don't have to come in for an interview, we'll mail it to you. Or they've said that you don't have to fill out all this stuff, we'll make it automatic for you. And governments have been doing that also. So we've learned really that much sludge with which young people and old people and sick people and healthy people and people of color and white people have had to live, much of that sludge really isn't necessary. And I'm hopeful that in the post-COVID era, the category of sludge, which will become very familiar, and people will think that both economic success and good deeds in the world are much more likely if we take the sludge away.
Interesting. So my understanding is that people will become more aware of the relevance of sludges, and therefore they will be able to identify them in a sort of better way, and therefore they will be able to avoid them to some extent.
Yes, much of life consists of naming something. So if you have a name for something, then you can maybe identify a problem that hadn't been identified before. So a GPS it's a thing, but it's also a name, and it can be applied, as we've discussed, to many things. Sludge, we need that word so that when a student finds it kind of hard to get help of one or another kind, the student knows I'm encountering sludge, and everyone nods and thinks that's probably not a good thing.
Absolutely. Professor Sunstein, thank you so much for your time. I wish you a lovely rest of the week and a following weekend. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. A great pleasure. The same to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.